Put this in your pipeline and smoke it. Today's program is long overdue considering the many sides of the Occupy movement that we have covered here in 15 Minutes of Fact. If you remember our original and ongoing mission, it was and is to give Occupy and its supporters and critics at least 15 minutes to, and I quote myself, clarify, strengthen, and memorialize what the rest of us are trying to understand. Well, that was true back in the original broadcast, still true today, and today's 15 Minutes of Fact will address another quizzical topic many Americans are still trying to understand, and that is the subject and dangers and benefits of fracking and the corporate oil and gas interests that are doing their best against growing resistance to promote and build this industry. So what could be so bad about adding to our supply of energy, and why should we become militant about a process that takes place miles underground? Well, if you don't already know the answers, our guest today will help. That person is Patrick Robbins, a way too young, I'm comparing him, of course, to myself, Occupy Wall Street writer and activist, whose focus and work is in climate change and, in particular, the Spectra Pipeline. So welcome to the show today, Patrick.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you here. And I apologize for taking so long to get around to this very important subject. I see that your credentials, you can certainly speak with some authority, they include an MA in Climate and Society from Columbia University. You've worked for nonprofits in that industry. I also know that you've worked with the Occupy Wall Street Sustainability Group and Occupy Farms. But,
yes, it's true.
Yeah, well, it's true, but it appears that Occupy the Pipeline seems to take up most of your time. So please tell us a bit more about yourself, and then about how you came about being an environmental activist, and why in the world did you make natural gas your target?
Sure. Thank you, Jerry. Well, I never meant to become an environmental activist. One of those things that just sort of happened. I learned about the climate crisis in 2008 in an environmental studies summer course that I took when I was completing undergraduate requirements. That was Chris Schlottman at NYU. It was excellent course on environmental history. And when I learned about the climate crisis, it really changed my thinking in a number of ways. It seemed like that was the highest priority issue I could be addressing with my life and my work. So I've ever since then tried to find ways that I could position myself most effectively in order to ensure that the transition away from a carbon-intense, economy happens smoothly and happens quickly. And yes,
in that case, you always have to have a target, and in all the work that you've done and the demonstrations that you've been involved in, apparently the one that catches the attention of most people and is getting the most headlines, even in mainstream media, is the Spectra Pipeline. So could you describe that operation, why it's a threat, who's going to be harmed by this, if at all, and how?
Sure. I hate to disagree with you, Jerry, but if I would love to live in a world where the media was paying the most attention to the Spectra Pipeline, but in my experience, it's been quite the opposite. What little media coverage there has been, and I don't mean to toot my own horn, but what little media coverage has happened has come about thanks to the concerted efforts of groups like Sane Energy Project and Occupy the Pipeline. The Spectra Pipeline is currently being built in the West Village on the Gansevoort Pier. So if you've ever, if you've passed by on the West Side Drive over this fall, that's what that is. That's what all that construction is. They don't go out of their way to tell you. And we're opposing it for a number of reasons. The gas that it will bring into New York City will expose New York City residents to dangerous levels of radon. The gas that would be coming in would be mined from the Marcellus Shale. It's estimated that certain sites on the Marcellus Shale have radioactivity that is, 70 times the average of natural gas baseline levels. As of right now, people will say, well, we already get natural gas as part of our energy infrastructure here in New York City. But we're getting it from places like Texas and Louisiana. If we're getting it from sites in, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, then the radon doesn't have that much time to break down. It doesn't have the distance for the radon to break down. And we see this as an environmental justice issue. There are going to be certain people in this city who are able to better weather the health risks that would bring better than others. And it would put us at the risks of explosions. There was the explosion in San Bruno, California, a very similar, diameter natural gas pipeline that exploded in 2009, killing 8 people. If something like that were to happen in the West Village, of course, it would be disastrous. And also, we oppose it because it would contribute to the demand for hydrofracking throughout the Northeast. As of right now, there is not a moratorium on fracking in New York State. There was a moratorium that expired last year. Cuomo has voiced tentative support for fracking in certain parts of the state, particularly along the southern tier. Our group and the groups that we are working with would like a absolute ban. A ban at the federal level would be fantastic. A ban at the state level.
Let me interrupt you there.
Sure.
Wasn't there, or is there, once upon a time, a bill called H.R. 2606 that was on President Obama's desk at one time? What was that about, and what happened with that?
Certainly. H.R. 2606 was a bill that would open the Gateway National Park. It would open the Rockaways to the construction of the Rockaway Pipeline, which is another natural gas pipeline being built into New York City. Through the Rockaways, through an area that's already reeling from the damage from Hurricane Sandy. You'd think the last thing in the world they would want to do is put that community at further risk. But they've, signed H.R. 2606 and given the authority to, I believe it's the Secretary of the Interior who now has been given the authority to, allow pipeline construction on that land. It sets a very bad precedent, and it's also, we see this contextualized as part of a larger movement in this country where this network of pipelines and this infrastructure of natural gas pipelines is being, built out to an incredible degree without the knowledge or consent of the people that it will affect. So we see our struggle as intimately linked to the struggle of the people in the Rockaways. Many members of Occupy the Pipeline are part of the same group. And we stand in solidarity with those people and with people who are dealing with this across the country. Are
you talking about Occupy Sandy and the occupiers who are helping there?
Oh, I'm sorry. By the group working, there's a group, CARP, Coalition Against the Rockaway Pipeline.
Okay.
That's been doing a lot of great work. And I mean, the answer is yes, and there are also several members of our group who are part of Occupy Sandy and who are doing that work as well.
Well, we're talking about hydrofracking now. So educate me and the audience a little bit more on that process and why the gas produced this way is any more harmful than any other naturally and easily gotten fossil fuels.
Sure, I'm happy to describe that. Hydrofracking is a process whereby a mixture of toxic chemicals is injected into the ground in order to fracture beds of shale to extract the natural gas lying in those beds. And thanks to something called the Halliburton loophole, a part of the energy bill signed by the Bush administration in 2005, companies don't have to disclose what's in those fluids. We've seen in sites where hydrofracking has taken place, poisoned groundwater. We've seen, increased risk of everything from people's livestock getting sick to, increased rates of, cancer and asthma and a whole wide range of health effects.
What bothers me, just as obviously it bothers you and everybody else is involved in the Occupy movement or any movement that's looking for open and honest dialogue things, is the fact that so much of this takes place behind closed doors, and I have no doubt with promises of benefits passing in both directions by the people that control our pockets, they control our money.
Absolutely. It's absolutely shocking. And I think you're absolutely right. In the Spectra Pipeline issue, we have a very tidy sort of microcosm of a lot of the issues that Occupy has been bringing to the forefront for a year now. Absolute lack of transparency. And when there is transparency, open contempt for the will of the people. You know, I was part of, there was a comment period on the construction of the Spectra Pipeline where, you know, it's something unprecedented. Something along the lines of 5,000 comments were filed against the construction of the pipeline, and only 22 or something like that filed in favor of it. And of course, the pipeline still ended up getting rubber stamped by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the entity that totally hypothetically, by the way, regulates the fossil fuel industry. And in terms of those promises of benefits, I definitely recommend to your listeners checking out Deborah Rogers of Energy Policy Forum. You know, she's an economist. She's not a radical. You know, she's, you know, has a history at Merrill Lynch and at, you know.
How do you locate her? How do you spell her name?
Go to her website. Energy Policy Forum is the website that she has that she's set up in order to deal with some of the myths surrounding the economics of hydraulic fracturing. You know, I don't have a television, but my grandma has a TV, and she says that here in New York State, you know, the commercials for natural gas have become incessant. You know, it's gonna do your taxes, it's gonna bring your kids home from school,
it's gonna mow your lawn, shine your shoes. Yeah, it's the amount of money that's spent on the PR is just about as revolting as the amount of money spent by the PACs for this last election that we went through. So my next logical question is, how can we as individuals, and then as ones and twos, and then as groups, and then as a community, how can we bring this juggernaut to a stop? How can New Yorkers, much less anybody else across the country, get involved?
Well, I would definitely recommend checking out saneenergyproject.org and signing up for their mailing lists. At the end of the day, there's only so much you can do on the internet, and there's certainly only so much you can do as a consumer. The tactics that we must employ in dealing with the threat of the fossil fuel industry are tactics of solidarity and communal tactics, rather than the kind of individualized tactics that are, you know, being handed to us. Go to the rallies, put pressure on your elected official. Come to the meetings. That's 7:30. Occupy the Pipeline meets 7:30 Wednesdays at the Brecht Forum on the West Side. You know, please come on down and, you know, and help us out. Put pressure on Christine Quinn. Put pressure on Cuomo. Call, write letters. Paint yourself green and do a dance in the West Side Highway. That's, you know.
By the way, do I understand that there were several people who, shall we say, bared their most intimate upper parts at one of the protests?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Well, sign me up.
You see, there you go. You know, you can have fun with this. You can engage your creativity and your imagination in coming up with actions. You know, it doesn't have to be a burden. You know, you can have fun with it. And, you know, the more imaginative we are in thinking about how we can attack these juggernauts, the more we're going to come up with tactics that they're not expecting. And that's really valuable, I think.
Well, that's where the creativity comes in, when the many of us are outnumbered by the few of us who have the media controlled and the money controlled. So it's very, very important that people take responsibility and not allow that to happen on their watch anyway. So I would say that you've certainly given me information that I need to have, and I'm going to be providing for our listeners some information about how to get in contact with you. But would you have one last thing to tell us before we sign off for 15 Minutes of Fact?
Get involved. That's it. That's really it. It's my birthday on Sunday, and for my birthday, I'd like all of you to get involved.
And where do they show up?
Come to our meetings on Wednesdays at the Brecht Forum at 7:30. Whenever, you know, you can sign up for action alerts, both on our website, which you'll be giving your listeners, and on our Facebook page. Respond to those action alerts, respond to the emails. We need physical presence. You know, there's conversations that you can have when you're physically present that you can't have online or on the phone. And, there's a creative process there that comes from being present, that, isn't replicable in any other way. And that's what we need. So please get involved. It affects every New Yorker. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you.
Well, that would be a wonderful birthday present for you, and a public acknowledgement of the importance of what it is that you and your friends and your group is championing. So I'd like to thank Patrick Robbins, Robbins, Robbins. Did you have another thought?
I did. I had one last point I'd like to make in contextualizing this push on natural gas. There's a concerted effort right now to portray natural gas as a clean alternative. This is a moment when people are viewing traditional fossil fuels with increasing skepticism, and we're looking around for ways that we can minimize our impact on the climate. I just want to say, I've talked to climate, I have a background in climate science myself, and I've talked to other people who do this work. And this notion that natural gas is a clean alternative, the problem isn't even that it's wrong, although it could demonstrably be wrong. The problem is that the science hasn't been done. And, we're talking about unknowns. And when you're talking about unknowns with methane, which has 70 times the carbon forcing, the global warming impact of carbon dioxide, those are unknowns that you really want to have known before you start jumping into something like the hydrofracking boom.
Yes.
So I just want to put a nail in the coffin of that myth. If there's anything that I want to get off my belt before I leave today, it's that.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And that's a good ending on that. It's my pleasure. Now, for those of you wishing to know more about Patrick Robbins and this fracking threat and the truth about so-called natural gas, you can find him on, well, I know we can get you on email at patrickopticon@gmail.com, but do you have an email, do you have a Twitter name or LinkedIn, anything like that?
I don't. For somebody who's been doing, this for a while via the internet, I'm actually surprisingly low tech, I think. But if you shoot me an email or just look me up on Facebook, I'm Patrick Robbins. I'm pretty easy to find.
And this is Jerry Ashton concluding today's show, and we want to thank Patrick for giving us a lot of important information in a very short period of time. Help me to continue getting out the Occupy stories by becoming my fan for the blog I write for the Huffington Post. Just go to the Huffington Post and type in Jerry Ashton, and there I'll be. And also follow me on Twitter as @WrittenOffUSA.